All right, everyone, this is Nathan Lindorf with The Rational Independent, and today we get a change of pace, thankfully. We are returning to The Guardian, we get to talk about Bernie Sanders, and we get to talk about silliness involving money, class envy, and all these other wonderful things. Sorry, after yesterday's heavy video, I was really excited to have a chance to cover something a little more lighthearted. Headline: They can survive just fine. Bernie Sanders says income over $1 billion should be taxed at 100%. That's the headline. So we're going to take that as factually true, as factually descriptive of what's covered. And we're going to pause right here, and we're going to cover something that is really important. Net worth is not the same thing as income. Being a millionaire means you have a net worth of $1 million or more. Being a billionaire means you have a net worth of $1 billion or more. It does not mean you make that much money in income every year. Okay, that's really important to understand right outside the gate, because one of the fun things that communists like to do is conflate simple economic issues in order to confuse people and make their points seem to make more sense. The headline is saying that Bernie Sanders' position is that anyone whose personal income is over $1 billion a year should have that income taxed at 100% for over that amount. Guess how many people in America have an income of over $1 billion a year? Nobody. He could enact this policy today and it would accomplish nothing, because it fundamentally misstates the situation. We're going to dig into the article. We're going to dive into this a little bit. This is a rich vein to mine. So, restated in the first paragraph, they're re-emphasizing this is what we're talking about. The U.S. government should confiscate 100% of any money that Americans make above $999 million, said the independent Bernie Sanders last week. This comes from an interview with Chris Wallace. I'm going to offer a few snippets. Chris Wallace says, "Are you basically saying that once you get to $999 million that the government should confiscate all the rest?" "Yes," said Sanders. "You may disagree with me, but fine. I think people can make it on $999 million. I think that they can survive just fine." I'm going to try and stay on point. So much silliness here. Okay. A little later on in the article, nonetheless, Sanders said his comments on the matter weren't a personal attack against billionaires. "It is an attack upon a system," Sanders said. "You can have a vibrant economy without a few people owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society." In other words, partway through the conversation, we're no longer talking about income. Now we're talking about net worth. He added, if he were in charge, if you make a whole lot of money, you're going to pay a whole lot of money. So now we're back to income. And to give them the last words, it's not a very long article. On Friday, Sanders told Wallace that he believes people who work hard and create businesses should be rich, but the concept of some being billionaires, again, back to net worth now, offended him deeply when 500,000 Americans are homeless and 85 million of them cannot afford to buy health insurance. Wait, I thought Obamacare fixed that. Did Obamacare not fix that? Did I miss that? I'm being a little sarcastic. So there's a couple of different ways that we can slice this up. First, I have to accept the possibility that the reporter is ignorant and doesn't understand Bernie Sanders' argument, because based on the lion's share of the quotes that I see and what I understand of Bernie Sanders, he's proposing a wealth tax to confiscate net worth of people who have more than $1 billion and have the government take it. That's a very different proposal than a top marginal tax rate on income over $1 billion per year, which is how the reporter phrases it in the headline and in the opening paragraph. We have to understand there's some genuine confusion here because the reporting is terrible or because Bernie Sanders' point is incoherent, or both. But let's go ahead and take both theoretical possibilities and look at them each individually. If you are proposing to tax income over $1 billion a year, you will collect zero money for that. And there's a reason why. Let's take Elon Musk, okay? Elon Musk realized a huge chunk of his net worth in order to buy Twitter. He took shares of stock out of that he owned that made him so wealthy from Tesla, and he liquidated a big chunk of those stocks. He sold them on the open market. When he sold them, he took an asset and turned it into cash. He realized the difference in value between when the asset was created, when he gained possession of it, and when he sold it. I hate to be pedantic, but people screw this stuff up all the time. It's not that complicated, but you have to think about it with the correct framing. When he did that, the tax system recognizes that now as income for Elon Musk. These concepts are not that hard, but it's important that we're all on the same footing, that we understand what we're talking about. When a person says income, generally what they mean is money that you have created either through the realization of the sale of an asset or through your own wage income. You exchange your time for a wage. That income is realized in a given year. That's the technical term. And that income is then, a portion of it is captured by the government using the progressive tax rate. The more income you realize in a given year, the higher your tax rate and the more you pay in taxes, both state and federally. That's income. Net worth is something totally different. Here's an example of how they're different. Let's say you bought a house in 1945 for $12,000 in Los Angeles. And you're a young couple. Let's say, you just got back from the war, you just got married, you're starting a family, you buy a house, $12,000, pretty nice house. And you happen to buy it in a good neighborhood and you hold on to it and you take good care of it and the neighborhood appreciates in value. 60 years later, that house that you paid $12,000 for is now worth $1.2 million because it's in LA, a very valuable set of real estate. Your net worth has increased to the point where you are a millionaire. Your net worth is now over $1 million. Congratulations. You made one right decision and now you're a millionaire. Good job. You don't have any of that as cash. Your asset is worth $1 million. But as long as it's an asset that you're using to provide shelter to yourself and your family, that's all it is. It's just an asset. Now you're 80 something years old and you'd like to move into a retirement home. So you don't need the asset to provide shelter for you and your family. Your kids are grown and gone. Maybe your wife has passed and now you're looking to move into a retirement home. Well, if you don't need the house anymore, maybe you sell it. So you sell it, and after paying realtor fees and that sort of thing, and maybe some taxes, let's say just for kicks and giggles, you net $1 million. Just a nice even $1 million on the sale. Okay, congratulations. For that 1 year, you have $1 million worth of income because you've realized the change in net worth from the asset to cash. You have now captured the appreciation of the asset from when you bought it to when you sold it. Your net worth remains the same. A sale event doesn't usually shift net worth. If anything, a sale event sometimes causes your net worth to dip a little bit because you just paid taxes and realtor fees and some other stuff. You now have an income of $1 million for 1 year. You're not gonna have that $1 million every year. You're gonna have for 1 year. You're gonna pay quite a bit of income tax that year, unless you can do a few things that are illegal within the system. A lot of people that are cranky call them loopholes or whatever, tax evasion. But the fact is the tax code is complicated. And the reason why it's complicated is so that wealthy people have the ability to hide their income legally from the taxman. In other words, you're not cheating the system. The system was designed with ways to protect portions of your income. So let's say, I'm not a CPA, but there's 1,001 ways that you can protect some of that income from such an unusual event. For instance, you could create an educational trust for your grandkids. You could hire a lawyer, you could pay some money, and you could fund that trust with some of the proceeds of the sale, say $200,000. And you could put it into that trust, and that trust is that money is then used for the express purpose of the education of your grandchildren. And as long as it's used for educational purposes, that money is not taxable in the same way. Things get really snarly and messy, trying to keep this at a real concept level. But that's one example where perfectly legally you can prevent a portion of your income on a given year from being taxed. Now, in the tax code, if you have a residence that you own and it appreciates in value and you sell it, you get to realize those gains tax-free. A portion of those gains tax-free. I think the current code is married filing jointly $500,000. So half of that appreciation is captured by that particular loophole in the tax code. That's another chunk that is not realized. So your taxable income might only be a couple $100,000. The point of this example is to show that there's a difference between income and net worth, and that income on a given year might not represent the income over your whole lifetime. It might be an extraordinary event, might be a specific thing. Elon Musk is a very big example that made a splash recently. He's one of the richest men in the world, and Elon Musk wanted to buy Twitter. One of the ways he did that is that he took some of his stock. Stock is just fractional ownership of a business. It's an asset, like ownership of the house, except for instead of one person owning the whole house, imagine 10,000 people owning 10,000 slices of a house. And now you have fractional ownership, i.e. shares. So Elon Musk owns a certain number of shares of Tesla, and he owns them based on whatever it cost him to acquire them. Now, for a lot of CEOs, the company compensates him primarily through stock grants. In other words, they don't pay a salary, they pay you in stock. That has the advantage of encouraging the CEO to make the company as valuable as possible, because then that makes his compensation as high as possible. It has some downsides as well, but it's not a terrible system. Most wealthy people got wealthy because they realized that the tax man comes after you when you turn your assets into income. So they want as little realized income as possible. That's one of the reasons why CEOs prefer to take their income in stock grants, because they are increasing their net worth while deferring the tax man getting a chance to come after their increase in wealth. Point of all of this is to say that once you become wealthy, there are a multiplicity of ways to dodge the tax man. So let's take Bernie Sanders at his face value and take it that he's going to say, okay, if you earn over $1 billion in a year, then we're coming for you and we're going to confiscate 100% of that income in a given year over $999 million. All that's going to do is cause billionaires to go around that and let's say they want to realize $3 billion worth of income and buy a private island. I don't know, whatever. They might do 990 million one year, and then 990 million the next year, and then 990 million the year after that. And now they've realized 3 billion and not paid any in taxes for the silly $1 billion tax rate. They're not idiots. That's how they became billionaires. It is very expensive to try and chase billionaires down and take their money because they can fight back. The IRS has been very frank in its assessment that it is more cost efficient to audit middle-class people than it is to audit billionaires, because billionaires have lawyers and accountants. Look at how much trouble the IRS has auditing Donald Trump. Whether or not Donald Trump is completely honest or terribly duplicitous doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, if the IRS tries to chase him down and fight him on every little detail about his tax return, he's going to fight back. And it creates this whole snafu back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's expensive, and it's not even guaranteed to succeed. That's the silliness of a $1 billion tax rate for income. A wealth tax is an even worse idea. So a wealth tax says anyone who has a net worth of over $1 billion, we're going to take all of your assets over $1 billion. This is the destruction of America. It will grind the economy to a halt. And here's why. Elon Musk runs Tesla. Tesla is worth X amount of dollars per share. He has Y amount of shares. Therefore, he is super rich. He's motivated to increase the wealth of Tesla, the worth of Tesla. He's motivated to increase the worth of Tesla because that increases his own personal net worth. But on top of that, he uses that net worth to create other value in the marketplace. He uses portions of his stock to buy Twitter, to fund SpaceX, to do a bunch of other stuff that he wants to do. And as a billionaire, he's earned the right to do the stuff that he wants to do because the market has rewarded him handsomely. The example that I use is Steve Jobs. If you want an iPhone in everyone's pocket, you need to accept that you're going to have billionaires like Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, from all intents and purposes, from everything that I've read on him, he's a brilliant, irascible old coot. Sorry, my kids watch these videos, so I have to be careful of my language. Not a friendly guy. Not a nice guy. Not comfortable to be around. Maybe not the greatest person to have as a friend necessarily. He had a lot of character flaws, let's put it that way. But he was brilliant in certain ways. And the market rewarded his brilliance by making him tremendously wealthy. And he, in turn, gifted the world with the device I'm using to share these videos with you. So I have a personal stake in that. I think the world is better off with smartphones. And Steve Jobs made that happen in a way that a government bureaucrat never would. There is a real qualitative difference between government ownership and private ownership of the means of production and the means of innovation. If you managed to pass a wealth tax and set the cap at $1 billion, capital would flee America. Because billionaires aren't stupid. They're going to take that money. They might take the hit once on a tax rate, and then they're going to send it out of the country. And America will no longer be the center of innovation. America will no longer be the center of investment and growth and value creation in a free market. You will neuter the free market and turn it into a pale shadow of what it is today, what it even could be, better than it is today, if you force capital to flee these shores. And you will fund some other country becoming enormously wealthy if they're smart enough to say, hey, billionaires, we're not idiots. Bring your money here, make us wealthy, and we won't abuse you. This isn't going to turn into anything good. Separate and aside from that warning, it's also hugely unconstitutional. I should do a little more research on the details here. I'm not a lawyer. I just pay attention. But I'm pretty sure it relates to the taking clause. The government is not allowed to confiscate private property without compensation. So, for instance, the government decides it needs to build a freeway, and the best path for that freeway is through your property. They are allowed to seize your property and evict you and say, go live somewhere else, but they have to pay you for it. That's one of the arguments on the right that supported COVID relief payments, because what they basically said is the government forced you to stop working. They need to compensate you for that. They took from you your potential income, so they need to compensate you for that. I think it's a poor argument. Besides being unconstitutional and a terrible idea, it won't actually create any additional revenue for the government. The simple truth is it's called the Laffer curve, which is kind of interesting. But basically the idea is as the tax rate goes up, tax revenues go up, but not linearly. For the first little while, they go up in correspondence. Okay. Y-axis, X-axis. Okay. As the tax rate goes up, okay, from 0% to 100%, the revenue realized does this. It's a curve. The higher the tax rate, initially, the higher the revenue received. Past a certain point, you no longer get as much revenue as you do raise in rate. And past another certain point, you actually get less revenue than you did at a lower tax rate. And I can explain it from an emotional and psychological perspective. Think about the billionaires and the fact that they have the flexibility to move their capital around. Any billionaire wants to operate in an environment that is free or close to free. They want to have the ability to create businesses, to create wealth, to move themselves forward with few restrictions, but they also want the protections of civil society. They can't just go set up in an anarchy environment or they'll end up getting their property taken. That's the problem with anarchy. So they want to set up in a society that has some rules, has a civil society, has a police force, has protection of property rights, has courts and legal systems, etc. And those things cause overhead. So they say, okay, a certain percentage of taxes is acceptable because that goes towards overhead. That goes towards, this is what it takes to operate in a country that has a functional rule of law, where I can be reasonably safe that my investments will be protected, reasonably certain I'll be able to receive the profits out and not have to replace stuff due to riots or thefts or coups or whatever. So there's a certain value to a stable governance, and they're willing to pay for that value. So up to a certain percentage point, capitalists and other highly productive people are more than happy to operate and just pay those taxes. And historically, it's right at about 19 or 20% that things start to get kind of funny. Once you start getting to tax rates that become excessive, let's say 40, 50%, some capitalists say, okay, I'm out. Or, okay, I'm going to start to take measures to protect my income. I'm going to start doing things that are no longer economically productive as they could be, but they're going to enable me to shelter some of my income from taxes. And so you start to see the split between the rising tax rate and the revenue collected. If you increase the rate 10%, maybe you only see a 6 or 7% increase in realized tax revenue, in actual dollars coming into the federal government. Okay, so you're starting to not capture 100% of the tax rate. That difference is going to be the portion that capitalists have chosen to divert in order to put them in tax shelters or in some other way try and protect them from the efforts of excessive taxation. Once you get incredibly high, 70, 80, 90%, now you're dealing with a situation where the people who are capitalists are going to say, listen, I'm not going to take this risk for free. I'm not going to do this and receive no income or almost no income from it. So instead, I'm going to start diverting big chunks of my organization to avoid these tax rates. Maybe I move businesses offshore. Maybe I change organizational structures where now technically we're owned in Ireland or whatever. There's a bunch of tricky things that CPAs and lawyers make a bunch of money gaming the system. I don't have the patience for the details, but the concept is sound. The point is, economic production declines, and therefore actual realized tax revenue goes down. It may sound counterintuitive, but literally increasing the tax rate can reduce the actual taxes received by the government, collected by the government. That's a historical fact. This Laffer curve is not a new thing. You can look at it. I think it was published in the 70s. Plenty of historical data to back it up. If Bernie Sanders gets his wish and he creates a confiscatory income tax rate of over $1 billion, he will collect no revenue from it because no billionaire is stupid enough to put his money into a tax rate that's 100%. He's just giving his money. He might as well just write a check to the government. It's not going to happen. If, however, Bernie Sanders means a wealth tax, an even worse idea. First, it's unconstitutional. Second, it won't actually increase any income because the Laffer curve will kick in and tax receipts from the government will go down. And third, it will cripple the American economy. It will drive innovation offshore. It will drive value creation offshore. It will take our best and brightest minds and they will leave and they will find a haven somewhere else where they can operate that does not have such an oppressive tax regime. The old fool has made a lot of money all these years with the same song and dance, but not precisely the same song and dance. I'll leave you on this particular note. The irony is just delicious. Bernie Sanders is a kooky guy who has for years and years and years railed against the excesses of capitalism. And for many years, his rhetorical line was to talk about the evil millionaires and billionaires, millionaires and billionaires. And then in 2016, he wrote a book and made a bunch of money from that book. and it became not public knowledge because he's a politician, that his net worth was now over $1 million. Let's listen to what happened.
Millionaires and billionaires, 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 millionaires and billionaires.
Oh, wait, hang on. Now I'm a millionaire?
This is a budget of the billionaire class, by the billionaire class, and for the billionaire class. More billionaires in his administration. Billionaires. Billionaires and the wealthiest people.
Suddenly millionaires aren't bad anymore. Suddenly it's only the billionaires that are bad. Literally, for decades, the millionaires and billionaires, the millionaires and billionaires. Again, there's so many sound clips from it. Suddenly he's a millionaire and his rhetoric changes. And magically millionaires aren't bad anymore. He didn't give the money away. He didn't give it in taxes. He didn't reduce his net worth. He didn't say, you know what, you're right. Holy crap, I screwed up. I'm accidentally a millionaire. That goes against my principles. Okay, let me write a check to the government, because that's what I propose, is that the government is a better use for it. Let me sell one of my extra homes. Let me reduce my net worth back down to a reasonable proportion and keep on cruising talking about millionaires and billionaires. One of the ironic responses I've heard to Bernie Sanders' rhetoric is for someone to please give him $1 billion so he'll shut up. Because once he's a billionaire, what's he going to complain about? Who's he going to attack? There are no trillionaires, not yet, but inflation will get us there. Anyway, that's my Reddit rant for today. Good luck out there.